tribes. They're going to have to go back in time to horses and buggies and so forth if they're going to meet that 2035 demand by Governor Patrick Bateman to eliminate cars with combustion engines, right? I say that because the big automakers are slashing production of their EV fleets. Ford slashing production of its F-150 Lightning that has been plagued with defects. There have been recalls. It sold 24,000 of them last year and lost roughly $36,000 on each EV in the third quarter of last year. So now Ford's cutting its production at its plant in Michigan while increasing output of the gas-powered Bronco SUV and Ranger pickup. Jim Farley giving you the corporate speak on this. We are taking advantage of our manufacturing flexibility to offer consumers choices while balancing our growth and profitability. Right. Thank you, Jim. GM told its Chevy dealers to stop selling its Blazer SUV owing to software and other problems. Consumer Reports survey in November found new EVs have 79% more problems than internal combustion cars. And of course, we talked before about Hertz selling off a third of its global EV fleet, buying more gas-powered cars. So what's going on? Are the subsidies not big enough? Is that it? For more on this and other matters economic, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Chris Whalen. Chris Whalen is an investment banker, chairman of Whalen Global Advisors, author of Ford Men, From Inspiration to Enterprise, and editor of the Institutional Risk Analyst. Chris Whalen, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
So Jim Farley, a modern-day Henry Ford?
No, he can add and subtract, though.
Yeah, he can.
You know, the EV phenomenon in the U.S. and around the world is kind of like Mao's Great Leap Forward. It was driven all by politics. It ignores the science completely. You know, in Ford Men, I recount the conversations between Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, and both of them wanted to build electric cars. They saw it, right? They said, God, we want electric cars. But the problem is that the physics of batteries are not good. They just don't work with cars. So what we've seen again is that the progressives in the U.S. said, oh, we have to do EVs, and you talked about California. That's not going to happen. You know, California will have to change their law, and they will have to admit that we're not there yet. Until we can put some sort of mechanism to generate electricity inside of a car, it's just not going to be practical. And who said this? The chairman of Toyota. I was so amazed when the little green morons were arguing with the chairman of Toyota, one of the most impressive corporations in the world. And the Japanese know about electronic things, don't they? They're really good at it.
Well,
and he
I've
said,
heard.
no,
Yeah.
hybrids are probably the best idea.
Yes.
They're the most practical.
I love
and he
the
was
hybrid.
ridiculed for this because these morons don't understand the science. So here we are.
What does
Yeah,
that
but
mean for Tesla, or Tulsa, as Biden calls that company?
Who just missed their earnings
play
target,
that?
by the
It's
way.
so funny.
The
Yeah.
stock got trashed.
Elon Musk needs enough money to keep Twitter going, so we're a little concerned.
They may force Elon out of Tesla. You know, the
Really?
board has enough oomph, I think, now to get rid of him. There's this lady shareholder activist I keep seeing on CNBC who doesn't like Mr. Musk out smoking dope. So, you know, we live in strange times, guys.
Well, yeah, all these environmentalists and people are like, oh, we have to have green energy. Have they ever looked online and seen any of these Chilean or Chinese lithium-ion battery mines and the child laborers that are in there digging down deep? I mean, it's
not good.
It's
Anything
inhumane.
With lithium is bad. Anything
Oh, my
with
God.
lithium is bad. So look, down the road, will we have electrification? Yes, we will. But the science isn't quite there yet. And this is the reality. So you want to get involved, you want to save gas, get a hybrid. They're fine. You know,
Look.
the science actually works, but the pure electric cars, no.
Gavin Newsom is not going to be stopped by science, Chris.
Well, he'll be stopped by economics, though, as you
Well,
pointed
I
out
don't
with
know.
the Ford. You know, the
Yeah.
Lightning is a cool vehicle, but you can't make it economically for this market. Nobody's going to pay for it.
I wanted to get to your reaction, just now macro, in terms of the economy. The numbers out yesterday: 2.5% GDP growth last year, 3.1% in the fourth quarter, and government spending and the consumer spending of the money the government printed. That's the way to keep the prosperity rolling along, right?
Oh, no. This is another one of these great historical parallels going back to the 1920s. We're in the roaring 20s right now, guys. And this time around, it's not funded with speculation and private sector activity. It's funded with government. So we can make this economy look like it's growing if we borrow enough money. Remember when PepsiCo got into the restaurant business? They bought Taco Bell and all these things, and they kept pouring money into them, and they said, look how great this is. But they were getting annihilated financially. And it was only down the road they looked at the debt they had accumulated, and they said, oh, maybe this isn't working. And they sold the restaurants and got out. Frito-Lay, that was another one that they owned for a while. So this is on a larger scale what we're doing with the U.S. We are subsidizing current expenditures with debt. And Janet Yellen is creating a real problem in the Treasury market because she's funding all of this with T-bills.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is inside of 1 year. So what happens when she can't roll all that short-term debt? And meanwhile, they're not issuing 10 years and 7 years and 30-year bonds because they don't like the price. This is like electric cars, right? Oh, we don't like the price. So she's going to hand this mess to Donald Trump. And I think Trump is going to need a really good Secretary of the Treasury.
Well,
Who actually understands what's going on.
Yeah, she was out having breakfast with our governor yesterday. Yes. A little photo op there.
I know she was in Chicago giving a speech.
Yeah, well, she had breakfast with him first, and he cleared their plate.
Yeah. She may have to resuscitate that Captain Kangaroo program she used to host when she goes into
I
retirement.
miss Captain Kangaroo.
Yeah.
Those were better days.
Simple times, yeah.
So you said that when they can't roll the debt. So what is the circumstance in which that would occur?
Typically, when we're auctioning Treasury debt, you want to have at least 2 to 3 bids for every bond you want to sell. In other words, you want a crowd in the room. Most recently, the crowd has gotten down to 2 bids for every bond you want to sell. If it goes down below 1, that becomes a negotiation, okay? Then you're a troubled debtor. You're Argentina.
Yeah, but what is the scenario in which that happens to the United States, where the perception is, and certainly the belief is, that we're still the tallest skyscraper in Wichita?
Well, we are, but look at the comparisons. Look at look at China. Are we worried about China anymore? Come on, guys. That whole thing is going to implode because of the Communist Party. They're no better at economic management than Joe Biden is with his electronic vehicles, right?
So you're saying, so you're looking at the other way. You're saying when countries like China implode, now we don't have anybody to buy our debt. That's the problem.
No, it's not that. Mostly we finance our debt ourselves. Hedge funds, the basis trade. That's how we sell Treasury bonds.
So if we're not worried about on the buying side, and we're just worried about the finance side, then what are we worried about? I mean, is it really debt if you don't intend to pay it back?
It gets too big. See, the U.S. has, in 2008, we got rid of a lot of firms that used to sell Treasury bonds. Bear Stearns, Washington Mutual, all of them had primary dealers. And these people sold bonds in Treasury auctions. They're all gone. So the only firms we have left are big banks that don't want to take any risk because they're heavily regulated too much. And then on the other hand, we have all these happy hedge funds that use lots of leverage. And they basically buy the Treasury bonds and do a risk-free trade and ride it down until the next auction, right? So when you look at it that way, you say, well, where's my constituency for my auctions? Who am I going to sell bonds to next month? And the question is, we don't know. The answer is unfortunate. So that's kind of where we are on the Treasury. I think it's unsustainable. I think Yellen is trying to pretend that she didn't make a mistake in 20 and 21 with spending. And, we're at $35, $36 trillion worth of debt. and a lot of it's front-loaded. A lot of it's short-term. So we have to start issuing longer-term debt if we're going to manage this situation, and that means that long-term interest rates are going to go up, Dan, for the first time in decades. We could actually see a normal yield curve where Fed funds is down at, say, 4, and the 10-year bond is at 6 or 7. Now, what does that do to the mortgage market? Because we price 30-year mortgages off of the 10-year Treasury. We don't price it off Fed funds. So I think we're looking at a normalization of the interest rate markets, and the catalyst is the fiscal problems of the U.S. Treasury.
And so, what's your sort of prognosis for the this election year? What is this election year? What does the economy look like going into November?
It's interesting. I'm not expecting a consumer recession. Everybody keeps looking for that. It's not going to happen. It's in commercial real estate. It's going to take years. And I think we muddle along for 3 or 4 more years, and then we have a big reset around 2027, 28.
I want to get your take on something we were talking about before you joined us. I don't know how familiar you are with the Chicago real estate market. This is on the residential side, but there's a huge project that was slated a decade ago called the Fordham Spire. You familiar with that? You remember that?
It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, there's 100 stories, and I can't think of the Argentinian architect, but the celebrated architect. It was really cool looking, and people were, pre-buying it, and that was when Chicago wasn't disintegrating before our very eyes, or not yet, at least. So now it's been a hole just like a hole where they had started to dig the foundation for the last decade plus. So now the news is that Related Midwest has gotten $500 million in financing for the former Fordham Chicago Spire site. And our mayor, BLM Brandon Johnson, is pretty excited about it because it's going to unite Lakeshore with the Lakeshore Drive and Lake Michigan with the Riverwalk, add green space, and earmark hundreds of units for Chicagoans making less than 50% of the area median income.
Great. Who's going to pay for it?
Well, right. I mean, it's sort of next level up public housing project at a certain point.
Yes, and we're seeing similar conversations in New York. And the question is, who is going to pay for it? Because you cannot tax individual apartment owners or tenants enough to cover the operating costs for the city. That's the issue. You need business. But if you chase all the business people to Indiana, in your case, well, who's going to pay for it? And we have the same problem here in New York. We've chased everybody out. We said they're the enemy, and they've left. They're building developments in Texas and the Carolinas and everything else. And meanwhile, there's no way for New York to address their housing issues because they've told all the capital, no, leave, we don't like you anymore. So it's great stuff.
And they don't even want Trump's business. Yeah, but they don't even want Trump's business anymore, which is,
no,
they changed the law to go after him, and it just makes me crazy.
Yeah, but these states are going to end up looking like Eastern Europe in the 1960s. That's where we're going to be because they won't have any capital, and they will be consuming capital in order to keep those nice people in those apartments. The city will go bust, is what's going to happen. They won't have the tax base to maintain services. We've seen that remember?
Already happening.
Flint. Think about Flint on a larger scale.
Well, think about Detroit on a larger scale, right?
Detroit on a larger scale.
Yeah.
Right.
How's that Detroit Renaissance coming along?
Well, it's organic farming.
We are living through a silly time because when the Fed messed with interest rates, it wasn't about economics, it was about politics. And when you tell people things are free and have no cost, they go out and do stupid things, and that's what we've seen.
By the way, an alert texter, Calatrava is the architect for the original Fordham Spire, and he's from Santiago, Chile, not Argentina. So I stand corrected.
Better.
Yeah,
Dan, get it right.
Well,
all right.
Look at Argentina. Argentina probably has the most with it, conservative leader in the world, and he's got a country that is bankrupt. He wants to dollarize the whole thing. Watch that process. It's going to be very painful because that means they've got to push local prices up and up and up, and then they're going to convert to dollars one day.
Well, he's got it right. Milei did at the World Economic Forum. The government is the
Yeah.
problem. The state is the problem.
He's channeling Ronald Reagan. I love it.
So do I. And, once he gets through that dollarization, the people that left Chicago for Florida or Arizona may be on their way to Argentina next.
Look,
Christopher.
much of the rest of the region is de facto dollarized. Across the border in Uruguay, everything is indexed to dollars, even in local currency. So real estate transactions, anything large, imports, exports, it's all done in dollars.
Chris Whalen's investment banker, chairman of the Whalen Global Advisors, author of the book Ford Men, From Inspiration to Enterprise, and editor for the Institutional Risk Analyst. Chris, thanks as always.
Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, you too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to Dan and Amy on your smartphone. Download the AM560 mobile app today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Would you go to court without a lawyer when the other guy is lawyered up? Or are you going to go it alone and learn law and procedure as you go? When you have an insurance claim for your home,